Welcome to Advice Amplified. This episode's guest is Tate.
Ideally, it would be a case where everybody receives some level of financial planning.
Sam is a co-founder and director at New World Financial Group with over 23 years experience in financial services. He's a futurist, an optimist, and a passionate believer in the future opportunity of financial planning.
The reality is, in its current format, the advice gap will never be solved.
In this episode, we learn about the process of setting up a new advice firm, New World's unorthodox pricing model, the current advice gap, and the role technology has to play.
Now, I'd love to go back in time and say, here's your proposition, here it is, it's ready.
I'm sure you're going to love it. Please do take the time to subscribe to our podcast now. Enjoy. So Sam, welcome to Advice Amplified. Really appreciate you kind of coming on. I'm really excited about this one because when we set up Advice Amplified, and the whole idea behind the show was to focus on how do we power up the industry to help more people to have a bigger impact, and how do we get more people to have financial advice. We know it's a really impactful thing, both financially, but also on people's mental well-being. But year on year, the advice gap's growing. Less and less people are in a position where they can speak to a financial advisor. And when I think about, anyone who's doing something exciting in the industry or in the world to solve that problem, like New World for me is top of the mind in terms of innovative business model that's really charging at doing something cool and new and fresh that actually has an opportunity to really impact that. So I'm really excited about this conversation. And I wondered if that's a cool place to jump into. Like, what's your journey into New World, and what's your take on how your proposition is different and has an opportunity to kind of spice up that space?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Pete. It's great to be here. And, I've been in financial services for 20 years, as has my business partner, Lisa. So we've seen a lot of change. In actual fact, my story goes further than that. It's, my father had a financial advice firm. So when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, I was in the late 80s, early 90s. I was kind of in the middle of it as a kid, so very familiar to me. The world today looks so different to how it looked then. And when we set up New World, we looked at three main things. We looked at three main gaps that exist: the trust gap, the advice gap, and education gap. And you're right that not many people are looking at these things necessarily. Not a lot of established businesses really need to. Maybe they're in the comfort zone. Maybe they've got just a nice business, well-intentioned business. But we were forced to look at who we are, why we exist, what we want to be, what our product wants to be. When we set the business up in 2021, in the middle of COVID, so the product itself is a financial plan. Okay, lots of people are doing it the way that we're doing it. We charge for that. We charge a professional fee, and once you look at it as a product, and a lot of people kind of feel a bit uncomfortable about that. Yeah. There's a lot of buyers in the world, but nobody wants to be selling, right? Yeah. But I think it's important because this is traditionally it's a sales-based industry, and it is important because we have evolved from a commission world, and there were a lot of people in the that started off as financial advisors that came from life insurance businesses or banks, and as a result of that, their background is sales. Traditionally speaking, it's sales, and that's something that's kind of not really talked about. It's skirted around the edges, and as a result of that, you end up with a legacy issue where advisors talk about trust. They talk about transparency and integrity. And for me, these things are just the prerequisites. Like, you shouldn't have to say these things, but it's so common. We've seen this evolution of what's available at our fingertips. Introductions of technologies like cash flow forecasting really changed the game as well. And when I'm talking about our product, that is a key element of our product. We have to, as an industry, really analyze what we're doing. If we're in this for the long haul, because this links to pricing, it links to charging, and at the moment, generally speaking, the industry charges based on how much money a client has.
Yes, yeah,
and that's linked to investments, and it's linked to and then your entire business model really is based on investment performance. Ultimately, that's what you're judged on. It's interesting because if clients see their portfolios not really moving, or maybe going down, or going up at perhaps a rate that they weren't expecting, they're really going to drill down on that and focus on that and look at what they're paying. Whereas if your product is the financial plan and you see the value in everything else that you're doing, and you're separating the price away from one element of your service, because that's what it is really. Because IFAs would talk about, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. So why are you charging just based upon one element of it? It's putting context. That's what we do. Put context towards the money, and we charge a professional fee. And once you do that, you can then take a step back and scale. Look at a bigger picture and scale that product, and say, well, okay, this as a product is something that we can really roll out to people that can't necessarily get investment advice from IFAs. People that don't have, because it is so linked to the investments, that really wipes out so many people from getting the advice because they can't pay for the advice. The IFA isn't going to make much money from them ultimately.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are saying that we're much more than investment advisors, we're much more than pension specialists, we're much more than tax experts. We sit at the heart of people's lives. We evidence it because this is what we do ultimately. We provide peace of mind and reassurance and put context to everything in your life, and that's what we charge for.
That's super interesting. Now, how does that change how you put your internal proposition together? So things like which platforms you're using, what the investment proposition is, how you pick some of your fundamental advice policies. Because I suppose you're kind of lifting the whole thing up at a massive level, and that's important presumably, but maybe bleeds into the background behind the actual plan itself.
Yeah, I think the general process is not too dissimilar to what you would expect. There's a centralized investment proposition. Where we are probably unique, fairly unique, is that cash is an option for us. Not to say that all of our clients go into cash, but cash is an option for us because it really doesn't matter to us where the money goes. We're charging a flat fee on a subscription basis, generally speaking. So an example that I would give, and it's an extreme example, is that if the best thing for a client is to go all into cash, we'll do that. And we'll do that, without worrying about what we're going to be paid for that, because, and there's no incentivization for us to invest in things that perhaps aren't right for the client. So the client knows immediately, and this is a trust thing. So this is, I mentioned the three gaps. Trust is such a big thing, and it's a big part of our marketing campaigns. But there is a trust issue. You've just got to speak to people on the street and speak openly with people to get feedback. We've done a lot of this, and it's a legacy thing. It's a legacy issue, and unfortunately, the vast majority of financial advisors have always done the right thing for clients. Yeah. And it doesn't take, as we all know, it doesn't take much to ruin that sort of reputation in people's minds.
I suppose, like you say, it's really interesting, almost like organizational psychological hack, that because you've completely removed those, conscious or unconscious biases and choices, that you can be quite frank with your client and sort of say, well, I am going to do what's in your best interest because the product is this and not this. How I get paid is how I'm going to behave long term.
Very transparent with the fees. There's no complication around it. What we try to do is list. We're still figuring this out. We haven't got all the answers yet. But I'm trying to make people aware of the problems, because we'll talk about maybe other challenges and competitors that are out there, which really do matter. So we don't have all the answers, but I'm very conscious of the issues from a macro level, when we're zooming out and we can see over a 5-10 year period, very aware of the issues that exist. But what we try to do is make it as transparent as possible to people so that they can see which tier they might fit in or choose to fit in. We have a non-investment option as well, where clients can just receive a financial plan for reassurance and peace of mind. And then we have, on top of that, we have an investment option, and then we have another option which is maybe aimed at more additional rate or higher rate taxpayers, where they might need more bespoke tax advice. So people should be able to find very easily where they fit within our subscription model. And it's very simple. It's just a price per month. So we don't say if you have over X amount, or if you have, if you're earning X. It's just really, what do you need? What do you want? This is the price.
And how have you found that kind of explaining the proposition to clients and them understanding it? I mean, not that any other model would actually be well understood, or is it easier, or is there? I suppose it's more straightforward in lots of ways.
More straightforward, yeah. So where we are really doing well, I would say, is young professionals. So people who haven't necessarily built up the wealth that would attract other financial advisors, but they are earning good money. And they do have choices to make and decisions to make. There's an abundance of information out there. But really, the value is putting all of that together to give those clients peace of mind. So, it's very obvious to me to create a solution for people like that, who might become what a traditional financial advisor would call a good client. But to me, it's, that's by the by. If someone's got 100,000 or 10 million, it really, it doesn't matter. It's about the advice that we're giving within that. The value is irrelevant.
I'm trying to think of a good way of phrasing this, because you've got your traditional business plan that we often see from advisors is set the practice up, and then over time I'll get rid of some of the smaller clients and I'll focus on the bigger ones, and I'll go from 100 clients to 60 to 40, and grow the average portfolio size, and that's my kind of route out into the sunset. And I suppose your model doesn't look like that over time.
Nope. No, it's pretty more straightforward, I would say, because, let's just be clear. If we were to set up and not look at the bigger picture, it's obvious to just follow, the route that everybody else has followed. The challenge is going to come when perhaps the baby boomers, die off for want of a better phrase, and start to pass that money down chains, family chains, and even to today, you've got people who in their 70s that are being advised by younger members of their family and saying, why are you paying 1% or 2% or whatever it might be? It makes no sense, because today we have at people's fingertips an abundance of information. It's only going to get cheaper and easier for people to invest. So if your entire business model is based upon, again, going back to this point, if your entire business model is based upon how much money somebody has and how that investment is doing, you're not seeing the bigger picture here, because there's an adaptation required. Otherwise, you're going to have your Kodak moment.
Like you say, over that 5 or 10 year kind of period, you can totally see how access to products is just absolutely phenomenal, like super easy, low entry points, really understandable, and then similarly access to like information. So I suppose that kind of power asymmetry that might have existed 10, 20 years ago is just being dissolved. And how do you see even if you played like 5 or 10 years into the future, when like Monzo, for example, they launched are launching their investment kind of options at the moment, aren't they, through BlackRock? And they've got little educational guides in there. Is there even a risk in your business model, I suppose, over that kind of duration of 10, 15 years that people might be able to seek it elsewhere and that kind of stuff?
Potentially. I mean, that I think goes for everything, doesn't it? Who knows where we'll be? We can only really look at the future and look at where we are and think, okay, let's evolve, essentially. That said, there are some big names out there that maybe will struggle, because I mentioned Kodak. Sometimes when you're a very, very established business, changing your business model is hard, and you've got and it carries a lot of risk as well. The benefit for me as financial planners is that we can sit at the heart of people's lives. We should have much more confidence in what we're offering, because I don't think that confidence is there yet. I think we just really do see a very narrow view of what we offer, despite all of the the process of the knowledge that we gain through experience and conversations and exams. But we should be very proud, and it's an honor to sit in front of a client and for them to let you in. Now, I think there's an opportunity for financial planners to go even further and to sit at the heart of communities.
Yeah.
I think that there's, and we should be shameless about that, really. We deal with a lot of things in people's lives, and that is, in my opinion, where real value is going to lie in the future, not in investment firms, not trying to outdo, bank performance or other, that's not, there's no value in that. There's no real value in that. And it's the process of improving lives, making people's lives better. And I don't think we've even scratched the surface in terms of that yet. I think we can really sit at the heart of communities. So we can't stand still. There's always going to be threats to any business, but we I think need to have more confidence and really go for it as an industry and as a profession, and really see ourselves sitting at the heart of lives and communities.
Yeah. I suppose, like you say, in the same way that just because you can access these products and you can learn about them doesn't mean you're going to actually do anything with that information and that capability. And actually having someone there as a coach, as a mentor, as a kind of a guide through that process that, like you say, is into like around those really key moments in your life. That's really, really powerful.
I think coach and mentor, I think, is a key thing as well. I think that's starting to happen, I think, more. We're certainly seeing it with most of our clients where we are coaching them, we're educating them. There's a lot of value in that. And there is an abundance of information, but that can also be confusing. And it can also create more questions than answers sometimes. So again, and that's always going to be the case, I think. So again, just being that person that helps knit everything together is how we need to see. We need to see it as a profession that just improves lives.
If you were to paint a picture of where the profession might end up in, I was really careful with my words, and I was going to say industry, and I was like, where we might end up in kind of 10, 20 years. Because I think it's really, it's easy to maybe overestimate where we'll be in 5 years, probably reasonably similar to where we are now, but maybe in 10, 20 years, I think it'll be quite tough to really predict what the shape of things might look like.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it would be a case where everybody receives some level of financial planning, whatever they need. People talk about the advice gap as though there's this magic wand that changes everything. The reality is, in its current format, the advice gap will never be solved because we are, as an industry, so focused on the amount of money that somebody has, and that's how we get paid generally. So how does the advice gap get fixed? It doesn't. Because there's a reason that 8% of people in the UK, I think, according to the latest figures, receive financial advice and 92% don't. Some of those 92% might be attractive to IFAs, but the vast majority, under the current regime, would not be attractive. And so therefore, without innovation, and innovation from a tech perspective and also from a societal perspective, we won't fix that advice gap. But the good news is, with a bit of innovation, we can. So AI is going to play a big role in terms of helping to really capture the depths of the market. But we as financial planners need to drive that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was going to ask your thoughts on AI because it's something I get asked on a daily basis, and I'm excited. I think AI is going to completely change the face of all of our lives in so many ways. But also being peak hype wave, I feel like that's a really easy thing for me to say. It's going to change our lives. Let's do it. Where do you see, what are you excited about right now with AI? And
I mean, it's great, isn't it? Because there's so much fear-mongering, scaremongering going on at the moment. And I was reading actually about, there's a guy called Ray Amara. Have you heard of him? He I think it was the 1960s, a scientist in the 60s. And he came up with the concept that we we underestimate we overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. And I think that's where we're at with AI at the moment. There's so much fear and excitement as well, from depending who you speak to. And the reality is AI has been around for 10 years or so, a lot longer. And it's in people's lives every day with, Alexa and Spotify playlists and all of these things. It exists. And it's really ChatGPT, isn't it, that's got people really, got people's real attention. Self-service checkouts, just normal, right? Just normalized, And I think that's where we'll sort of just drift anyway, because there's a lot of drama around it at the moment. But the reality is that over time, we'll just, these little implementations within our lives will just start happening, and they'll improve, generally speaking, I hope, and I'm an optimist that they'll just start improving our lives. For the industry, for the profession, for financial planning, it's a massive opportunity. I think AI is going to get rid of mediocrity.
Yes.
If I think there's going to be a lot of that. But if used well and used innovatively, it can be a real game changer. And I'm talking really about processing speeds. So the back office work that gets done through AI could provide, could take hours and hours off what is building a financial plan, a very long process.
Yeah.
And that means that we can help more people and we can make everything cheaper, which is, again, I go back, technology is deflationary. So, but it's fine because we'll be able to help more people and it becomes more accessible.
Yeah. It's super interesting. And it makes me think, especially, your comment that AI has been around for a long time. And, even was it 2016, 2017, there was a big hype wave back then. And, I was there building some tech and building some AI, and, it goes away and you're like, okay, that didn't really change much. Like, why do you think we haven't nailed it yet as an industry? The advice gap's still growing. Some of it seems doable, doesn't it? And yet,
I think there's no incentive to change. Really, because we're not there yet. These things take a long time to play out, don't they? Societal shifts. I think in many ways we've been in almost a global depression since 2008. In a lot of ways, maybe not in an economic sense, but we've done a lot to prevent that. And how much damage that will lead to, we'll only see in time. But from a societal perspective, globally, there's a lot happened that you end up in a situation where you end up with extremes in politics and all of these different things going on. But these things have played out, and the economies have been held together through sticking plasters or whatever's required to get through the immediate problem. And life kind of goes on and things drift. But if you zoom out, big changes are going on. Big changes are happening. So financial advisors have probably not really noticed much of a shift in their business practices and in their results and their numbers, which is great. But something else is going on. There's a bigger picture at play. And that will play out in time. If you speak to somebody in their 20s, as you've mentioned, they're very savvy, far more savvy than 20-year-olds were 20 years ago, far more savvy. And that goes back. So I don't think the industry is really incentivized to fix the advice gap, because if your business is doing fine and doing okay, you will get your innovators. But if it's fine and it's ticking along and everything's okay, why change it? And I think that's an attitude it's not a criticism really. Everybody's in a different situation, but it's common to think that, everything's okay because the numbers are okay, without maybe thinking, but what's going to happen in 10 years time? Maybe to some people, 10 years time doesn't matter, and that's also fine.
Yeah. If you're making good money right now, why bother? But it's gonna come, and it will take you by surprise if you're not kind of ready. What would you interested in your kind of advice, or like the process of starting a firm? And I suppose you did quite a lot of introspection in what you wanted to do in terms of what kind of proposition, but what kind of mark and impact you wanted to have on the industry. And I'm asking this question because I get asked, and a lot of the time I do point at you guys in the world, you and Lisa. If you were young advisor or paraplanner or someone looking to enter the industry and do something cool, how do you do that? How do you start a firm, and how do you figure out what a good firm looks like? And
well, you prepare yourself to not sleep for 2 years. It starts off with, so myself and my business partner we're a good mix. Lisa's very, very technical. We're very, very passionate about the planning. I'm very passionate about the bigger picture, and as is Lisa, but bigger picture and seeing where we might end up. And that sort of combination worked really well, because from the beginning we had the same goals, and that was to create the best financial planning firm that we possibly could. Now, what we, it goes with starting any business, right? Start with the old Simon Sinek thing. Start with why. Why do you want to do this? What are you passionate about? What do you really want to achieve by doing this? Who are you? And allowing that to really drive what you're doing. Usually when people think about that, the answer isn't, I want to replicate 99% of what already exists.
Yeah.
Again, I think looking at the bigger picture is always a good idea when starting out with a blank slate. So maybe thinking about not necessarily how things look today, but how might they look, and would it be easier to get to aim for that from the beginning? Well, actually, it usually is, rather than shifting and adapting at a later date. And then you've got the standard regulatory process, which we went through during COVID. Fortunately for me, Lisa led on that, but it was pretty mind-numbing stuff that took, I think, about 6 to 12 months, maybe 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and I guess again, from what little I know about that process, having a really solid, vision of what the firm's going to be, what your business plan is really supportive in that process, isn't it? And
it is. It is, and things like consumer duty, it was pretty easy for us to go through that process, because it really drove a lot of our process 2-3 years ago when we set the business up. So a lot of it, again, Lisa might disagree because she was the one that did most of the legwork on this, but it was actually an easy process for us, relatively easy process for us to just confirm that we were doing the right things, because we built those in from the beginning. So it's very important to do that, to spend time on process and also marketing. What do you want your business to look like? What's your brand? How do you want to sell? What are your levels? Where do you want to get to? What's the purpose? Because again, all of these little things drive the decisions that you make when you are setting up.
And what, given where you are on your journey and what you look forward to in terms of like business plan, but also like personally and all that, what's kind of annoying you at the moment, or pissing you off, or the biggest challenge that you're sat there going,
yeah. I mean, I'm quite hard to piss off, actually. I'm pretty, again, I'm pretty laid back guy, but the biggest challenge, is the messaging, the marketing and the messaging, because we are a small firm. We don't have you don't have 6 figures, 7 figures to throw at marketing and get messaging out there. It's and our message is quite different, and there is a systemic belief in what financial advisors offer, which versus what we're offering is quite different. Getting that message out and educating people is it's good fun, but it's a long game if you haven't got millions of pounds to throw at marketing. So our messaging's hard. So we do that through a lot of education. We go into businesses and we educate employees. We do a lot with schools. We do a lot with colleges. But that messaging is hard work to get out. Yeah, and trying to shift the conversation, shift the narrative.
Yeah, I suppose you're fighting kind of the whole separate narrative that you got to put a new message out there and re-educate people, I suppose, on get them to unlearn some stuff in a way.
Yeah, exactly. So again, jumping back to the beginning, the three gaps that we looked at: the trust, education, and advice. We really do focus on all three of them and kind of live by them. So education is a big thing. We've done a lot of free education stuff. All really is over the last 2 years. We are starting to now commercialize it a little bit, because we're in the position that we're able to, and it's potentially an income stream to take this educational work into businesses. But we've done a lot of educational stuff for us to go through that learning experience, to find out what works, to find out what messages to give to which people. But education is such a key element to what we do. And we all know that that education within financial affairs just isn't there, or hasn't been there. Again, younger people today are educating themselves in many ways, which is great. But there's a lot of work to do. So that's a key thing. But it also allows us to speak to tens and tens of people at a time and tell them the benefits of what we're doing and how we work.
And do you think, like, if you could jump back to before, when you were sat there with Lisa figuring out what are we going to do here, let's build this awesome thing, would you have listened to some of the stuff you might tell yourself if you could go back in time, or do you think it was really important to go on the journey you've been on and learn it and get the scars?
It's all the journey, isn't it? Yeah, there's loads of things that we've changed and adapted. But that's probably always going to be the case. It's always an evolution, and we're really pleased with our future proposition for under 50s. Really pleased with it. Now, I'd love to go back in time and say, "Here's your proposition. Here it is. It's ready." But that was a journey to create it. It evolved over time to where it is today, and we did learn a lot that we'll take forward.
I suppose that's the power, isn't it, of your business, really, that you can evolve, you can be agile, and you can actually innovate. Whereas, like you said earlier, an incumbent firm who's like locked into a pricing structure and a proposition, they can't move around and shift and see what works and double down on that. That's really powerful. And so I've asked you what's annoying, and what are you like really pumped and hyped about?
Adoption. Yeah, adoption. It's a really rewarding thing when people. So again, I've worked in this industry for 20 odd years. I would say today, what we provide to clients really does change lives in a way that just didn't 20 years ago. We provide, generally, we provided a really good service to clients and made their tax affairs very efficient and, invested well and all this thing. But today we go into so much detail into people's lives, and we pull heads out of the sand. We provide people opportunities that they weren't aware they had. We get people out of sticky situations because, again, we don't just look after people with a lot of money. We look after people that actually really need help and a bit of direction. And those people, the satisfaction that we get, we get people crying on us, with great, gratitude. So that's so rewarding. And there's millions of people in that position that are lost and just need a bit of guidance. They're not in the worst position imaginable.
Yeah.
But it feels like it might be to them.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a plan and they don't know how to put a plan together. So adoption, I would say, is something that we're really excited about, and it's so rewarding when a plan comes together.
Yeah. I mean, how do you kind of? I can only think of this question in terms of a story. So when I did all my exams and did the CII stuff and got my advanced diploma, and then you sat there as that guy at the party that like wants to bring everyone to talk about pensions, and I realized pretty quickly I didn't actually learn anything of value to some of those situations around building a plan, helping people like understand their finance, and even the kind of maybe non-regulated elements of financial advice. Like how do you build that capability as a team?
Yeah. So the biggest attribute of a financial planner over the next 10 years will be empathy, not technical knowledge. You can get that. I can Google that.
Yeah, true.
I can Google the answer to questions that I couldn't Google 20 years ago. It's not to diminish that. It's a very, very important part of the role. But the biggest attribute is empathy. And again, it goes back to what are we doing here? What are we doing? What are we really doing? And we're providing that stability in people's lives. We're creating peace of mind. We're providing stability, and empathy is such. I gave those examples a moment ago. People will open up to us if they know that we can help them, and we require empathy in abundance for that. So 100%, that's going to be the biggest attribute. It's always helped. It's always helped in a big way, but going forward, it's going to be number one.
Yeah, like you say, you can Google the other stuff, can't you? You can ask ChatGPT, but can you? You need someone there by your side, don't you? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed that, Sam. That was a really, really insightful conversation. I feel like I learned a lot about you and the business, and I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. So really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun.